glad to be here. Actually, what I ought to say is I'm lucky to be here, because I am the unluckiest guy in the world. Everything in the world happened to me coming up here. To begin with, I had a real bad miss in my car. Of course, I couldn't just make her get out right there in the middle of the highway. I got almost here, and I had a flat. Well, I say flat. It wasn't completely flat either. I had, just so much air left in the tire, but I figured with my bad luck, rather than take a chance on ruining a brand new tire, I should pull into this station right at the edge of town and get a little air put in the tire. So I pulled in, but just as my luck would have it, there was something wrong with the man's air hose, and it wouldn't pump no air. But he was a real gentleman, and he went right to work on it, and the first thing you know, he had it pumping just like a brand new one. But just as he started to put the air into my tire, there was a lady pulled into the station in this great big long Cadillac. She slammed on the brakes and jumped out real fast, and she asked the man if he had a restroom. Well, he misunderstood her, and he thought she said whisk broom. He said, "Yes, ma'am." He said, "We've got one around here somewhere." He said, "I don't know just exactly where it's at right at the minute." He said, "The boys keep it kicked from here to yonder." But he said, "I tell you what," he said, "if you'll back it right up here, I'll blow it out for you with this air hose." So I come on in on a flat. Just ruined another brand new tire there. No, I was just kidding. That didn't really happen at all. If it had happened, I'd have stayed and watched. But since I am here, and since I can see y'all are having a good time, and here you've been a-blowing them horns and a-carrying on, you're having your New Year's Eve celebration, looking forward to 1965 and everything, I think we ought to just sort of take time out and think about it for a little while. Think about all the times it happened in 1964, and think about all the times it's going to happen in 1965. It's the best thing in the world, so we might just as well think about it a while. I'm for it 100%. I'll never forget when I first got married, my wife said she wanted to go to Hawaii to see how it was over there. I said, "I don't have to go. I know how it is. It's the same everywhere." It's the best thing in the whole wide world. And ain't it a lot of fun with your shoes off? It's more fun that way. And I'm for it 100%. Well, I said I'm for it 100%. Actually, I shouldn't say that, because to tell you the truth, I'm for it and against both. Because I believe that once you get against it, you're going to be for it. In spite of the world. It's great. It's worldwide. A lot of times. But it's never out of season. And Christmas just passed here. That's one of the very best seasons in the world for it. I asked my wife what she wanted for Christmas. She said she'd like to have a baby grand piano. Well, of course, I couldn't afford no baby grand piano, so I gave her a little upright organ. Just a little bitty organ. But she asked me what I wanted for Christmas, and of course I told her. She said, "Oh, no, not again." I said, "Oh, yes, again and again, and every time I can." She said, "Well, do you want it wrapped?" I said, "Well, I don't mind the box, but don't give me none of that red ribbon." Christmas morning, I woke up way before she did. I laying there waiting on her. And she opened them great big blue eyes. I reached over and said, "Christmas gift." She said, "Oh, no, not again." I said, "Yes, again and again and again." She said, "But, honey, not right now." She said, I hear the children. They're already up, and they're in the living room in there at the Christmas tree." I said, "Forget that old tree in the living room for just a little while." She said, "But that old tree's only up 1 week out of a year." I said, yeah, that's what I hear, and I dread it. Like I say, I'm for it 157%. She's a good old girl, though. I like her. She's real good. Her name's Virginia. I call her Virgin for short, but not for long. But she's a good girl, and she's a good housekeeper. Every time she gets a divorce, she keeps the house. Well, no, I really shouldn't say that about her, because actually she is a good housekeeper. You never find no bed bugs or moths or anything like that around our house. The roaches keep them eat up all the time. Oh, I thought I married a secretary. I found out later she was treasurer. Of course, that's all right, I guess, because we did manage to put away a little something for a rainy day. An umbrella and a pair of rubber boots. The neighbors next door to us had furniture went back to Louis the 14th. Ours went back to Sears on the 15th. One thing you just can't hardly do, you just can't keep up with them Jones. About the time you catch up, they refinance. This new couple moved in next door to us, and me and my wife was trying to keep up with them. It dang near killed me. I found out later they was honeymooners. It was fun while I lasted. I'll never forget when we first got married, me and my wife went off on our honeymoon. And she was just a little bit backward, to tell you the truth. And she was standing over on one side of the room, and I was standing plumb across over on the other side of the room. And I said, well, now here's the way it's going to be. I said, I'm going to count to 3. I said, when I say 1, I'm going to be flipping this light off. I said, when I say 2, you better be for getting your clothes off, because that's what I aim to be doing. I said, when I say 3, you meet me halfway across the room. Well, I said 1, and I reached up and I knocked that light off. I said 2, and clothes started flying every which way. I said 3, and it sounded like a herd of horses. But somehow in the dark, I missed her. And I just went right straight out the window. The window was open, and I went straight out the window and fell right down at the door of the hotel. I landed in this little clump of bushes down there. I looked up, and I saw the doorman standing there at the door. I said, hey, buddy, I said, I fell out of my window, and I need to get back into my room. He said, well, just come right on in. I said, no, but you don't understand. I said, I ain't got no clothes on. He said, that don't matter. He said, come right on in. I said, I don't believe you heard what I said. I said, I fell out of my window, and I'm down here without any clothes on. I'm naked. I said, I can't come through that lobby there where everybody will see me. He said, I told you it don't make no difference. Says, come right on. Said, ain't a soul going to see you. Everybody's upstairs trying to get that woman off that doorknob. One day I worked late at the office. It was already dark. It was nighttime already, and my telephone rung, and it was her. She said, honey, said, when are you coming home? I said, well, I'll be home after a little. She said, forget it and come on home right now. Said, this is your birthday. I said, goodness gracious, I completely forgot about it. It is my birthday. She said, well, I didn't forget it. Said, I want you to come on home. And I said, well, since you put it that way, I'll be right there. I slammed that phone down, and I took off. Oh, boy, it's my birthday, and she wants me to hurry home. Hot dog, I'm for it 100%. I hurried home as fast as I could go. I sneaked up to the back door, and I walked in, and there she sat over there in the den on the couch, all dressed up pretty and looking so pretty for me for my birthday. I run over, and I sat down beside of her, and I kissed her. And she said, wait just a minute. And she reached up and turned out the light. And I said, hot dog, oh boy, happy birthday to me. It's my birthday. I was really tickled about the whole thing. I reached over and I started to kiss her again. And she said, wait a minute, honey. Said, I got to go in the other room to get ready. Oh, I jumped off that couch when she left. I was tickled to death. A hot dog, it's my birthday again. I got to figure out how to have more of these birthdays. She went in the other room, and when she went, I started getting undressed. I was tickled completely to death. And just about the time I got completely undressed, she called me. She said, "All right, honey, come on in. I'm ready." Well, I headed for the other room just as hard as I could go. And just as I got into the other room, all the lights come on, and all the neighbors sang, "Happy birthday to you." I was talking to her one day, though. I said, "Honey, I was just talking to the janitor of the building here, and he tells me that he's been with every woman in this building except one." She said, "It must be that stuck-up Miss Jones up on the 4th floor." Oh, well. She told me one morning, she said, "I had a dream last night." She said, "I dreamed that I was at this great big auction." And she said they was auctioning off ladies' home companions. She said Clark Gables brought $5,000. And she said Marlon Brando's brought $3,000. And she said Robert Taylor's brought $1,000. I said, "And how much did one like mine bring?" She said, "Well, they went in lots of 12 for $1." I said, "Well, it's odd that you should have had a dream like that last night, because I had a dream sort of similar to that." She said, "What kind of dream did you have?" I said, "Well, I dreamed that I was in this great, big, huge, monstrous place, and they was having this auction." And I said, "They was having the same kind of auction, only they was auctioning off men's favorite subjects." And I said, "Cleopatra's brought $5,000. And I said, "Jane Mansfield's brought $10,000. And I said, "Elizabeth Taylor's brought $20,000. She said, "And how much did mine bring?" I said, "Oh, that's where they held the auction." Oh, me, but I finally had to divorce her. Just completely divorced her. Don't know why I ever married her to begin with. That's the ugliest woman I ever seen in my life. She looked like the good Lord made her just as ugly as he knowed how, and then jumped at her and hollered, "Boo." There I stood at the altar saying I will, and I knowed all the time I wasn't going to be able to. But there's one thing I'll have to say. Why, I never did find no strangers in my closet. It's always my best friends. I'll never forget, I come home one day, and I found this strange man in the bed with my wife, of all things. There he was. I walked right into the bedroom. Of course, he looked up and he saw me. He was for getting out of there just as fast as he could. He jumped out of bed and he grabbed his clothes in one hand and headed for the doorknob with the other hand. But I was pretty upset about it, and I had this great big long pocket knife in my pocket. I reached in and I pulled it out, and just as this old boy come by me, I just reached out and grabbed him right by the, you might guess where, and I just sliced it off. But he done had his hand on the doorknob and done had it halfway open, and as he went out the door, he turned around, looked back at me, stuck his tongue out and said, "Yeah, you missed me." I come in another day and I found the doctor in bed with my wife. I said, "And just what do you think you're doing, doctor?" He said, "I'm taking her temperature." I said, "Oh, well, then, all right." I said, "But that thing, when you pull it out, sure better have little red numbers on it." That's a favorite game nowadays. Button, button. Here comes my husband. This lady went to this doctor for a complete physical. The doctor got all done examining her. She said, "Well," says, "is anything wrong with me, doctor?" He said, "Yes." He said, "But it's trifling, just trifling." She said, "Well, that ain't too bad a thing to do, is it?" This other couple, this couple went to the doctor. They told him, Doc said, "There's something wrong with our sex life, and said we'd like for you to watch us." he said, well, now, that's a pretty strange request to make. And they said, well, we'd appreciate it if you would. He said, well, if you feel like it's absolutely necessary, he said, I guess I can. So he showed them into the back room and to the couch, and they got on with it. And, and when they got finished with it, the doctor said, well, I just don't see a thing in the world wrong with that. The man said, well, are you sure? And the doctor said, yes. Said, I don't see nothing wrong with it. The man says, well, how much do I owe you, Doc? And the doctor said, well, that'll be $5. So the man paid him, and they went on out. Well, the next week, the same couple come back again. They said, Doc, this thing still ain't just exactly the way they ought to be somehow or other, and we'd like to get you to watch us again. He said, well, now, are you sure that that's necessary? And they said, well, yes, we think you ought to watch one more time. And the doctor said, okay, one more time. So he took them back into the back room, and they got on with it. And after it was all over, he said, I just don't see nothing in the world wrong with that. He said, I just don't think there's any need of y'all coming back to me. The man said, well, all right then, if that's what you think. He said, how much do I owe you? The doctor said it'll be $5. So the man paid him, and they started out the door. Just as they got to the door, the doctor, he said, wait a minute. He said, I just got to know. He said, what did you think was wrong with you to begin with? The man said, well, Doc, said, her husband is awful jealous. Said, but he don't suspect anything when she goes to the doctor. Said, and besides that, a motel costs $15, and you only charge $5, and the Blue Cross pays half of that. There was this guy, he never would give his wife no money at all except immediately after, and even then he'd only give her 50 cents a time. One day he found her cookie jar, and he found this great big roll of 5s and 10s and $20 bills. He said, where in the world did you get all that money? She said, what you think? Everybody stingy like you are?